Picture this. It is the dead of night along the Iranian coast of the Strait of Hormuz. A deep, eerie silence. No tankers, no shipping lights, just darkness. And then, without warning, the sky tears open. Bomber aircraft, invisible to radar, begin their descent toward Iran's most fortified underground positions. Positions built over decades, buried beneath mountains, reinforced with layers upon layers of concrete and rock. Positions that were supposed to be untouchable. They were not untouchable. What unfolded over the next several weeks was not just a military campaign. It was a historic turning point for global energy security, for the balance of power in the Middle East, and for the doctrine of asymmetric naval warfare that Iran had spent over 40 years perfecting. A doctrine that in a matter of days was reduced to rubble. Welcome to World Brief Daily. I'm going to walk you through every critical layer of this operation, the weapons, the strategy, the key figures eliminated, and what it all means for the future of one of the most important waterways on Earth. If this is your first time here, welcome. Make sure you subscribe to World Brief Daily and hit that notification bell so you never miss an analysis like this one. We cover the conflicts, the weapons, and the geopolitical shifts that shape our world. And right now, there is no story more consequential than this one. Let's begin. To understand how we got here, you need to understand what Iran was actually trying to do. This was never just about shutting down shipping lanes. This was a calculated strategic play executed at the worst possible moment for the global economy. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched coordinated airstrikes on Iran under what Washington named Operation Epic Fury. The opening salvo was devastating. According to reporting from Britannica and multiple defense sources, the operation targeted Iranian missiles, air defenses, military infrastructure, and Iranian leadership, conducting nearly 900 strikes in just the first 12 hours. The opening strike killed Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Iran's response was immediate and escalatory. Retaliatory missile and drone barges struck U.S. military bases, Gulf states, Israeli territory, and commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. And then Iran played what it believed was its trump card. It closed the Strait of Hormuz. Think about what that actually means. The strait is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. It is the single most critical choke point in global energy infrastructure. As reported by the Wikipedia analysis of the crisis, roughly 20 million barrels of oil per day, nearly 20% of all global seaborne oil trade, flows through that narrow passage. Before the conflict, approximately 138 ships passed through daily. By March 17th, that number had collapsed to just 3. 3 ships per day in a strait that normally sees 138. Brent crude oil surpassed $100 per barrel on March 8th for the first time in 4 years, eventually peaking at $126 per barrel. According to analysts cited in Britannica's overview of the conflict, the closure has been described as the largest disruption to energy supply since the 1970s energy crisis. Not the Gulf War, not the Iraq War, the 1970s. This was the scale of the crisis, and Iran knew exactly what it was doing. To enforce this blockade, Iran deployed a layered strategy of terror. First, the mines. At least 12 Maham 3 and Maham 7 limpet mines were laid in the strait, silent, invisible, designed to deny passage to any vessel that dared approach. Second, Iranian fast attack boats. Hundreds of IRGC-affiliated speedboats operated in swarm configurations, attacking commercial ships from multiple angles simultaneously. As of mid-March, Iran had confirmed at least 21 attacks on merchant ships, including fatal strikes on tankers like the MKD-VOM. Third, and most critically, Iran's shore-launched anti-ship cruise missiles. Weapons like the NOR, an Iranian version of China's C-82 missile with a range of 120 to 170 kilometers, the Qadr, an upgraded variant capable of covering 200 to 300 kilometers of the strait, and the most dangerous of all, the Abu Mahdi, with a range exceeding 1,000 kilometers, capable of striking vessels as far away as the Gulf of Oman. These missiles were hidden in hardened underground bunkers, carved into the mountainous terrain along Iran's coastline. They had been constructed over decades, protected by thick concrete and solid rock, practically immune to conventional airstrikes. Practically here is where it gets interesting, because the United States military was not going to allow Iran to strangle the global economy, and it had been preparing for exactly this scenario. The response came in two distinct phases, each one more precise and more devastating than the last. Phase 1, the underground strike. On March 17, 2026, U.S. Central Command released a statement that sent shockwaves through the defense community. CENTCOM confirmed in a post on X that U.S. forces had, quote, successfully employed multiple 5,000-pound deep penetrator munitions on hardened Iranian missile sites along Iran's coastline near the Strait of Hormuz. The weapon in question, the GBU-72 Advanced 5K Penetrator, and it was making its combat debut. Let's take a moment to fully appreciate what this weapon is, because the engineering is nothing short of extraordinary. The GBU-72, confirmed by Wikipedia's technical entry, is a precision-guided bunker-busting bomb weighing exactly 5,000 pounds, approximately 2,270 kilograms. It uses a GPS and INS guidance kit derived from the JDAM architecture, allowing it to strike targets with an accuracy of just a few meters, regardless of weather conditions. Clouds, smoke, darkness, none of it matters. But the truly remarkable part is what happens when it hits. The bomb's elongated steel body is engineered to minimize air resistance and concentrate force onto a smaller surface area on impact. It does not detonate on the surface, it plunges through. According to the 1945 analysis citing former Pentagon expert Chris Osborne, the GBU-72 penetrates 100 feet of earth, or over 20 feet of reinforced concrete, before its delayed fuse triggers detonation. When it finally explodes, it does so in a confined underground space. The pressure has nowhere to go. The shock wave expands inward, collapsing the structure from within. This is not a bomb that destroys a bunker from the outside. It destroys it from the inside. As reported by the War Zone, the GBU-72 fills a critical capability gap in the U.S. arsenal between the older GBU-28, which has been in service since 1991, and the far larger and far more scarce GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator. Using the GBU-72 allowed the U.S. military to preserve its limited stockpile of the larger weapon for higher priority nuclear targets, while still achieving decisive results against Iran's coastal missile infrastructure. Multiple GBU-72 bombs were dropped on the hardened underground caves along the northern shores of the Strait of Hormuz. The targets housed Iran's NORCAD and Abu Mahdi anti-ship cruise missiles, the very weapons that had turned every passing tanker into a potential casualty. According to CENTCOM, the strikes destroyed the underground structures from within. Iran's decades-old infrastructure built to survive any conventional attack was gone in a single night. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper confirmed the results with stark clarity. Iran's missile stockpile, he stated, had been reduced by 90%. 90%. That is not a wound. That is the destruction of a capability. Now, if you're finding this analysis valuable, if you want to understand not just what happened, but why it happened and what it means for the world, please subscribe to World Brief Daily right now. Hit that bell icon. We are covering this crisis in real time with the depth and context you won't find anywhere else. Now, back to the story. But here is where U.S. military planners understood something crucial. Destroying the missile sites was not enough. Because even with the underground arsenal neutralized, Iran still had threats moving on the surface of the strait. Fast, agile, and extremely deadly threats. Enter Phase 2, the surface war. U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman, Air Force General Dan Caney, highlighted this second element during a briefing at the Pentagon. He was talking about the A-10 Thunderbolt II, the legendary Warthog. And before we go any further, and yes, an aircraft designed in the 1970s was a decisive weapon in a 2026 maritime conflict. There is a reason for that, and it is worth understanding. At the heart of the A-10 is the GAU-8 Avenger, a 7-barreled 30mm rotary cannon capable of firing 3,900 rounds per minute. Its armor-piercing rounds can shred a small, fast attack boat in seconds. But the A-10's true advantage is not just its firepower. It is its ability to fly low and slow at propeller-driven aircraft speeds, not jet speeds. This allows it to patrol a target area for extended periods, maintaining what military planners call persistent loiter time. It can also carry AGM-65 Maverick missiles and unguided rockets. In short, it is simultaneously a long-endurance surveillance platform and an immediate fire support machine. According to CENTCOM's official statements, A-10s were deployed specifically to hunt and destroy Iran's fast attack boat swarms in the Strait of Hormuz. And they were not alone. AH-64E Apache attack helicopters operated in full coordination with the A-10s, using Hellfire missiles and their own 30mm cannons to eliminate mobile threats along the coastline. The dual combination was decisive. The small boat fleet that had previously been disrupting 27% of strait traffic began suffering catastrophic losses. Iran's hundreds of fast attack boats, the backbone of its asymmetric naval strategy, became the hunted. And crucially, the A-10's persistent presence in the air had a secondary effect that cannot be overstated. While those aircraft were airborne, no Iranian vessel could surface to lay additional mines. The mine-sweeping operations already underway became dramatically safer. The Warthog was not just a weapon, it was a shield. There is one more critical development that changed the calculus in the strait entirely, and it came not from the air, but from the sea surface itself. On March 26th, Pentagon spokesperson Tim Hawkins confirmed to Reuters for the first time that unmanned drone boats were actively patrolling the Strait of Hormuz during Operation Epic Fury. The new platform was the GARC, a 5-meter-long autonomous speedboat produced by Maryland-based Black Sea Technologies. Capable of fully autonomous navigation, these vessels conducted patrols covering over 450 hours during the operation, with an operational range exceeding 2,200 nautical miles. Their primary missions were surveillance and early warning, but they carry a secondary capability that Iran's fast attack boat crews needed to understand very clearly. When necessary, these vessels can be weaponized as direct kamikaze attack vehicles. Iran had early in the conflict attacked oil tankers twice using naval drones. The U.S. had faced criticism for being slow to counter this asymmetric threat. The deployment of the GARC fleet was the response. America was now playing its own asymmetric game. Then came the strategic decapitation. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced a critical nighttime operation that fundamentally altered the course of the crisis. Admiral Alarza Tangiri, commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, the highest-ranking officer directly responsible for the Strait of Hormuz closure and mine-laying operations, was killed in an Israeli airstrike in the strategic port city of Bandar Abbas. Katz framed the operation explicitly as a product of close partnership with President Trump and delivered a message to the Iranian leadership that could not have been more direct. Quote, "We will track you down one by one." U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth summarized the situation during a cabinet meeting with President Trump in a single sentence that said everything that needed to be said. Iran, he stated, no longer has a navy or a naval commander. Let that land for a moment. Not weakened, not degraded, gone. This assessment is supported by independent military analysis. According to Gulf International Forum's detailed examination of the collapse of Iran's naval defense, U.S. forces destroyed or incapacitated more than 120 Iranian naval vessels across both the Islamic Republic of Iran Navy and the IRGC Navy since the operation began. Major naval facilities at Bandar Abbas, the entrance to the strait itself, along with installations at Chabahar and Qanar in the Gulf of Oman, were struck within the first hours of the conflict using Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles launched from U.S. Navy destroyers. President Trump addressed the scale of these operations directly, stating that the U.S. military was, in his words, crushing Iran's weapons stockpiles, destroying their missiles and drone factories at levels nobody ever thought was possible, and turning their defense industrial base into nothing. CENTCOM went further. Admiral Cooper confirmed that the operation was not merely targeting active weapon systems, but was systematically dismantling the broader defense industrial base, the production facilities, the logistics networks, the command infrastructure that would allow Iran to regenerate its capabilities over time. This included a naval drone storage facility near the strait identified on March 1st and completely destroyed within 8 days. An attack drone production facility in Thrawn rendered inoperative less than a week after identification. The Yazidi Military Depot, a critical IRGC missile command facility responsible for producing light and heavyweight torpedoes, was struck and its 8 production buildings destroyed. This was not just a military operation. This was the systematic eraser of Iran's capacity to fight this kind of war again. And yet, and this is the part that the headlines often miss, Iran is not yet finished. Even after all of this, Iran still possesses asymmetric options, hidden mobile launchers that survived the campaign, stockpiled drones, Iran's capacity to produce Shahed-type kamikaze UAVs in large quantities has not been fully eliminated, and critically, the mines already laid in the strait are still there, awaiting clearance. Mine clearing operations, as military analysts have noted, are expected to take weeks. Iran recognized, even as its conventional military capability crumbled, that it still held economic leverage. In an extraordinary move, Tehran was demanding a $2 million transit fee from some tankers attempting to pass through the strait, while allowing its own oil and ships from friendly nations to proceed. On March 26th, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbasar Araghchi announced that ships from 5 nations, China, Russia, India, Iraq, and Pakistan would be allowed to transit. Malaysian and Thai vessels gained access through diplomatic engagement with President Masood Zeskian's government. This tells you something important about Thrawn's strategy. It was not purely military, it was economic warfare. The strait was being used as both a weapon and a toll booth. The U.S. campaign has significantly weakened both levers, but they have not been fully neutralized. So where does this leave the world? The numbers tell a story of slow but real progress. Before the conflict, 138 ships passed through the strait daily. By March 17th, that had collapsed to 3. By the end of March, according to the data available, the number of daily crossings had climbed back to approximately 15. Still well below normal, but the trajectory is unmistakably upward. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Cooper, in a briefing on March 23rd, put it plainly, quote, "The lock on the Strait of Hormuz hasn't been fully opened yet, but the majority of the locking mechanism has been shattered." The short-term projection, according to military and energy analysts, is that 60 to 70% of normal strait traffic could return within weeks, provided mine-clearing operations proceed as planned, and Iran does not successfully reconstitute its asymmetric capabilities. But here is where the story becomes genuinely global, because the United States is not fighting this alone anymore. On March 19th, a critical diplomatic development unfolded that signaled a shift in coalition dynamics. The leaders of the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Japan, and Canada issued a joint statement explicitly condemning Iran's mine-laying, drone attacks, and strait blockade. They announced they were prepared to make concrete contributions to restore safe passage. They were not alone. A total of 22 countries pledged support. This was not merely symbolic diplomacy. The United Kingdom became the coalition's operational vanguard. The Royal Navy officially confirmed plans to deploy unmanned mine-hunting drones and autonomous surface vehicles, systems designed to detect and neutralize Iranian mines from a safe distance using acoustic and magnetic signature mimicry to trigger controlled detonations without risking human lives. Energy Secretary Ed Miliband stated clearly that every option, including mine-hunting drones, was under active examination. British military experts were dispatched to coordinate directly with U.S. forces in the region, and the Type 45 destroyer HMS Dragon was deployed to the eastern Mediterranean, with British bases made available for U.S. strike operations. This is London's signature contribution, technology-assisted mine clearance. While the U.S. strikes from the air, British autonomous systems target the invisible threat beneath the surface of the water. The division of labor is precise, the alliance is real. And according to Army Recognition's analysis, with approximately 50,000 U.S. military personnel currently deployed across the region supporting Operation Epic Fury, the operational capacity to sustain and expand these efforts is formidable. But let's be honest about what was not happening at the same time, because it matters. Multiple U.S. allies declined a shift from reluctance to commitment, driven by the sheer economic pain being felt across Europe and Asia as oil prices surged and commodity markets convulsed. Here is the reality of what the economic damage actually looked like beyond the headline oil price figures. According to reporting from multiple outlets tracking the crisis, the closure disrupted not just crude oil, but aluminum markets, fertilizer prices, and in a detail that surprised many observers, global helium supply chains. Qatar's Ras Laffan facility, one of the world's primary LNG export hubs, was struck by Iranian drones, causing a fire and disrupting operations. Iran's attacks on Gulf state energy infrastructure were not random. They were targeting the nodes of the global energy system with surgical intent. Shipping insurance markets told the story in cold financial terms. Before the conflict, war risk insurance premiums for transit through the strait ran at roughly 0.125% of ship insurance value per transit. By the days immediately before the strikes began, that had already jumped to between 0.2% and 0.4%. 4% for a very large crude carrier, a supertanker. That translates to an additional $250,000 per single crossing. And once the conflict erupted fully, protection and indemnity insurance war risk was effectively withdrawn entirely by March 5th, making the economic calculation for most ship owners straightforward. A strategic decapitation that removed the single officer most responsible for the blockade. An air campaign of a scale and intensity that, in the words of CENTCOM, has imposed lasting constraints on Iran's strategic options. And through all of it, World Brief Daily has been here, analyzing every layer, every weapon, every decision point. That is what we do, and we will continue to do it as this situation develops. We will, of course, keep you updated as the mine-clearing operations progress, as coalition partners deploy their assets, and as the daily ship crossing numbers climb back toward normal. The story of the Strait of Hormuz is not over, but the most dangerous chapter may well be behind us. If you want to stay ahead of these developments, if you want analysis that goes beyond the headlines and actually explains what these weapons do, what these decisions mean, and where this is all heading, then subscribing to World Brief Daily is the single most important thing you can do right now. Hit subscribe, enable notifications, because in a world moving this fast, being informed is not optional. And as always, thank you for watching.